Love technology. Okay, guys, we are live.
All
So
right.
we were talking backstage about shows and what works, what doesn't, what we've noticed. Um, so I guess let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Go ahead, Carl. You can start.
Okay. I'm Carl Witzman. I've written, I don't know, maybe 9, 10 books. And they range from nonfiction to fiction. And most, all of them are still available on lulu.com if anyone's interested. I'll talk about one of them later.
What about you,
So
Donna?
enthusiastic.
I know, right?
Yeah. I'm Donna
Energy
Carlene.
level 5.
I write mainly crime drama, but I do have a fantasy book, a historical adult romance, and just a fun novel that I like to call Woodstock Dreams. Dan?
Oh, I'm Dan Hollifield. I'm the senior editor and publisher of Aphelion Webzine. It's the internet's oldest creative writing science fiction and fantasy webzine. It's basically a permanent floating writer's workshop. And in the last 25 years of continuous publication, we have helped almost 500 writers turn pro, basically by showing them how to edit their stuff, how to make sure that they really pay attention to the publisher's submission guidelines and things like that, and basically just uh, give them feedback on anything that they send to us, cheer them on, make sure that they don't just get frustrated and quit, and eventually hard work pays off.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
What do you got going on, Skunk?
I'm Skunk. I have nothing to add to this conversation at all.
Trust me, because
What do I have? What do I got? What do I got?
You were just entering. You were just entering this field, right?
yeah,
Technically,
Yes.
right. But
technically.
if we have questions or things about the crap I can't do, the graphics, the sound, I can't do that stuff. But you're a genius at it. That's what you bring.
Okay.
Well, and then he is dipping his toes into being a writer.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And you
The,
got
the
that
script.
screenplay you're working on?
I have not seen the screenplay, so
Yeah, you didn't
I'm
get a chance.
taking my trusted expert's word on it that this is knock your socks off sort of really for a first writer, damn good. So
Yeah, absolutely. So what I noticed at the cons that I've gone to, so I went to one this past weekend and the weekend before. There's lots and lots of traffic. There's lots of people looking for things like rare comics or the rare one-off toy that you can't find anywhere. Not a lot of people buying anything. All of the vendors are talking about low sales or no sales at all, and lots of people. Lots of traffic, lots of people for the cosplay, but not a lot of traffic. And like, if I make a sale, it's because I've worked my ass off to get it. So we're thinking it's a little bit of timing. Like, people are waiting on their taxes to come in. It's a little bit of people are burnt out on all the marketing that we as creatives have put out there. So maybe it's time to change things up. Maybe it's time to pull back on the marketing that we've been doing. I don't know.
I begin to wonder about that too because every day I open my email and there's tons of things from people trying to sell me stuff. Sometimes the same place will send me 2 different emails the same day trying to sell me stuff, and it's just like, really? And then you get on like Facebook,
Right.
and all your friends are trying to sell stuff, and you've seen it all before. You've seen
Right.
all the ads
And you've
all the
supported it before.
Kickstarters.
That's
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and how much
Once
can
you-
you share it before your friends get tired of it?
Well, that's true too. Yeah. So yeah, I can see where people are getting kind of burned out about it, But what else can you do?
I was going to say the question therefore becomes, what do we do now?
Mhm.
Well, I've been reading articles and watching YouTube videos from different channels that I haven't watched before. So, like one of them is the Creative Pen with Joanna Penn. She's a prolific writer. I think she's got 48 or 50 books out. And she started as, hey, I'm working full time, but I want to write. So she started from the bottom, just like the rest of us. But she's got really good advice on, hey, if this isn't working, try this. Change up your routine. If it's something like you need to write more and you just can't get the words out, try this. I mean, Joanna's got all kinds of stuff, and you can look her up at thecreativepen.com. I've been watching 20 books to 50K, and it started out as a Facebook group, but then it went and had a conference in Vegas. Well, this year and last year they went virtual. So now they have YouTube videos that you can watch from all the speeches that took place that you would normally go when you would see this. Well, now it's on YouTube, and they've got some really good ideas.
Okay.
So that's another thing where if we're not making sales, we should, at least in my opinion, we should at least be honing our craft. If we want to get better, if we want to be ready for when people are ready to buy, you better have quality shit ready.
This is true. It helps to have the not only the back catalog, but the works in progress coming along, and future projects that you can work on from time to time when you really need to take a break from something that's getting you down because it's not going as well as you would like at the moment. And then you get to a point to where you might even get overwhelmed by the amount of irons you've got in the fire, and you have to decide it's time to take this one out and make a horseshoe.
Yeah. I've never ever done that. Never.
It's already got hot enough. It's time to get the hammer and beat this bugger into shape.
Yeah. But that's what I noticed it shows. I had someone tell me, I watched your YouTube videos, and sometimes you guys talk about things that I just don't get yet. And the phase that they're in is they've written something. They haven't published it, but they've written something.
Right.
So advice there from me is finish it. Find an editor. I don't care what you say. I don't care how good you think it is. Find an editor. Yeah. Because someone else, another set of eyes, is going to tell you what you didn't see.
Yes.
So find an editor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your next step. If you're starting, in my opinion, your next step is editor.
Yeah, one of the problems that writers have is we know the whole story, and sometimes we forget to type it all.
That has happened. Yeah.
The editor is that other set of eyes who has no idea what the story is and can tell you where you skipped something or where you telegraphed something when you should have expanded it, and can tell you, this paragraph really doesn't add anything to the scene. You might want to either rewrite it or consider chopping that one out.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. Because like when we write things, sometimes we'll take a break and come back to it, or we'll say something. And like Donna caught me, she says, "You've said this same phrase and you've used it 3 times in that book." I'm like, really? I have? And I didn't realize it because every time I came back to it, I'd add that phrase. And she was like, since she had read it in one sitting, she could say, yeah, he said that before. So she caught me there, and it was like, good, because I don't want to repeat myself in a novella. I mean, that's short enough. In a novel, that might It's
still I've had the same thing happen. There's a maybe 3 or 4 really, really nice turns of phrase that I would use entirely too often, and my editor would call me on it and go, "Hey, you just did this 5 pages ago."
Yeah.
Change the way you're saying it. You don't have to lose the imagery. Just say it with different words.
That's a good
And
point.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. If first you're upset
Yeah,
that they're
that's
trying to correct your deathless prose, but then you go, "Oh yeah, you're right."
Yeah.
well,
Well,
and a lot of
it's
authors will write the way they speak.
mhm.
So
Mhm.
if they speak and they use a certain term, that term is going to get used again and again and again. And Skunk,
Mhm.
that was one thing that I saw with your screenplay. I didn't see that. Like, I was expecting all those like new writer stuff because this was the first thing that you've shown us that you've said, "Hey, I've worked on this." So I expected, like he's going to repeat phrases or there's going to be repeat scenes or whatever. You didn't have that. That's why I was so impressed because it wasn't there. It was really good.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm trying.
Yeah, one of our in one of our writers group, they had a thing that they shared where very is a very overused word. So
Yes.
instead of saying, very this, and they had like 20 different
Mhm.
examples. So you sort of like, instead of saying very loud, saying
Deafening or something.
you,
Yeah.
Definitely.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
There's a whole list out there. Somebody made a meme out of it. There's a whole list of
Mhm.
things. Instead of saying "vary this," say "this."
That was
Mhm.
"Vary this," say "this."
Yeah. Exactly.
And
I
yeah,
posted that, and there was another one for how to say "said" instead of "he said" or "she
Ah.
said" or "they said."
Mhm.
There are other words to use, people.
Oh, sure.
Yes,
yes there are. Yes there are.
and
And
yet
then
it can be
if
that can be overdone too.
yes, I was just about to say if you overdo that, the editor's going to go back. So don't you remember the word "said"? I mean,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
don't ever use murmur or something like that more than once or twice in a book. You can't have it
Yeah. Yeah.
3 or 4 times a chapter or whatever.
It sometimes if you're reading something, okay, and you will just ignore the he said or she said. I mean, it helps you know who talked, but you ignore that in your head. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
pay attention
Yeah.
to
You
it.
read past that.
Yeah, but if every other sentence is she murmured, he shouted, whatever,
Mhm.
Right.
then you notice that, and then you're
Hmm.
like, huh, okay, something's going on here, and you don't want to draw attention to that. You're
Oh,
just trying to help the reader figure out who just spoke.
Oh,
an- another
yeah.
cute another cute thing to avoid is Swifties, which they're called that because they showed up so often in the Tom Swift books.
Oh,
Um, and if the watchers are not familiar with that, it was early sci-fi. It was written the same sort of way that the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew was. You had a house full of writers, and they all used the same publication name. It was a house name,
Mhm.
and there would be things like, "That's a rather cutting remark," Tom said sharply.
Oh,
It's a cute game to play if you're doing it on purpose, but
right.
if you're trying to write serious dialogue, you're either, you're either going to make people think that you're making jokes, or they're just going to give you
Yeah.
that stink eye to
Yeah.
the thing and go, "I'm going to throw this across the room if you do that again."
Mhm.
Yeah. Keisha says she murmurs a lot in real life.
You have a
She
toddler, though,
does.
Keisha. So yeah, I'd murmur things too.
Hmm.
I remember those days. What were you gonna say, Scott?
It's it was just I was remarking on what Dan was saying because it's something that and what all of y'all were saying. It's something I've noticed a lot in the books I've read. Like there was a book I read recently where I remember every time that there would be a certain phrase get used, it would get used the same. It would get used in the same sentence,
Mm.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah.
and that was that. I'll be honest, like if it wasn't for the story being so good, that would have immediately drove me away. Because it would like just I'm not going to use an actual quote because I don't want to shame somebody. I'm not that
Right.
person. But it'd be all like it'd be along the lines of like he took a slice of pizza and bit into the slice of pizza and then put the slice of pizza down, and it was like, how many times do I have to read slice of pizza?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that Linda will pinpoint me on things like I will tell the reader that the character felt this way about this situation. And then the next chapter, I'll tell them the same thing in a different way. And she's like, how many times are you going to beat the reader over the head with that information? Like, I'm not. I forget. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure that they knew. She's like, give them some credit. They know. They understand.
Yeah. They pick up on those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the pieces of advice I was given was before I ever even turn anything over to an editor, once I have the completed first draft, don't do it earlier, but once I have the completed first draft, start searching for those overused words. Just do a global search for, well, and then whether this, there's an entire list of things like that that you wind up just, it's an extra word in the word count, but it's really not a necessary word most of the time.
Yeah, something like that, or like Skunk Rocker was saying, you almost think, was this an assignment? You had to have so many pages or so many words, so you're trying to fill it out because. I went to journalism class, and that really cut out for me a lot of those kind of things. So I write too short a work usually, and
not enough in-depth emotion.
Well, yeah, I don't have a lot of description and such, and then my books end up being, thin. but people who read them say, wow, that was really to the point, and I'm like, good. That's what I wanted to do.
That's how you write. Yeah.
And but yeah, if you're looking for, had they sat down and had this meal and it was delicious, because no, it's not going to be in there. I cut all that stuff out. Maybe some people like that stuff. I don't think modern audiences do so much. So.
For me, unless it moves the story forward, no. Like if the guy is a cook, okay, you're going to talk about meals that you had or meals that he cooked, or if the girl's a cook, whatever. If the character, if that's an important part of their life, then add that. Yeah. But if it's not, I don't need to know that they sat down to a 7-course meal and what it tasted like and where the food came from. And I don't care. Even when it's historical, I don't care. Like, I know that they ate food that was different than what we eat now. I get it. Okay. Move on.
If it's not important to the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's a murder mystery and the reason that, certain people in the party died is because they ate the fish, then it's important to know, that kind of information. But if it's not important to the story, it's just filler. And I'm not one of these people who could write one of those big, thick books.
I just can because I can't shut up.
I know several writers who fall under the category of they never have written a sentence that they would rather have written an entire paragraph to say the same thing.
Yeah. Another thing to look for that spell check doesn't look for, if you're a new writer, look for the fact, is your sentence a run-on sentence? Is your one sentence an entire paragraph? If it is, perhaps change it up a little bit, reword it somehow.
That's something I learned from one of the writers' books that I read. A fellow by the name of Keith Laumer was one of the best adventure writers ever. And he said, look, make the sentences short. The shorter the sentence is, the faster the reader gets through, the more action it seems to the reading that you're going through.
Yes. Now, if you want to slow it down, and then write your sentences longer. Make the longer sentence, but not a run-on sentence. And it does. It slows down the speed of the story because your reader isn't jumping from one thing to the next.
One of the things you can use, and Skunk will probably agree with this, is, like a movie maker, okay? There are certain scenes that you're coming up slowly on, and you're showing every step the person's taking. And then after that, it's a bunch of rapid jump cuts from one person to another person, show this, show that, and that builds up more tension. And yeah, sometimes your sentence length can help with that because, as your sentences get a little shorter, it seems like action's happening faster. It's more like those jump cuts.
Exactly. And if you're trying to slowly build up to it, you might want to start off on purpose with some longer sentences. And then as the action finally arrives, I wouldn't say just jump into these teeny tiny short sentences, but very rapidly reduce the length of your sentences and make them more watch exactly what you're saying and make those short sentences carry exactly the meaning you want to them, exactly the action you want to convey, and
Short
not
and
just
precise.
There you go, precise. You have to aim in.
Yeah, because you can draw out saying, the sunset was purple. Okay, you can draw that out and make a freaking paragraph with it. Or you can just say the sunset was purple. Okay, move on, Or do you need to be in that moment? Do you need to think about the sunset for a moment? It all depends on what you want to convey in your story. What part are you at in your story?
Right. On this next book I'm working on, not the current one I'm still stuck on, but the one I'm thinking about afterwards. It's starting
I'm
out
not writing
with,
any more books ever.
I know. I keep saying this, don't I? But it starts out on the beach, and there's a couple walking hand in hand on the beach, and this guy waves at them. And you're thinking, okay, yeah, that's kind of dull. Until you realize the guy is sitting there dying, and he's wondering, wow, I wish I could have had that life.
Ah, yes.
But that comes up in the next paragraph. So you read along, you're thinking, okay, that's nice. And oh, crap. Now, yeah.
Well, that took a turn.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point of it. You to get a certain effect, you give the reader something that's this nice, gentle build-up. And then in the next little bit, you kind of raise the tension a bit, and then finally you drop them off the deep end with something they never expected. But it's all a logical progression from the easy to the moderate to the oh boy.
Yeah. Okay, so riddle me this. The story that I've been working on, in my head, I said to myself, it has to go this way. Okay, so here's how it has to go. The guy that is in the future finds this girl. She's the mate to his brother warrior, right? So she's not his, but he's got this strange sort of connection with her, like a brother-sister kind of thing. Like he can feel it, but it's not really there yet. So he knows they're not mates, okay? But he knows he's got to protect her and get her back to Healthvane, okay? So the problem is we're at 20,000 words, and there's stuff happening with them. Like, they're thinking about it. They're thinking, now, wait a minute, there's a connection here. I kind of like this guy, and I kind of like this girl. And, okay, so we're 20,000 words into the book. And it's going to take another 10,000 for her to meet the new guy. Or not even that. It won't take that. But another 10,000 for her to realize the new guy that she's going to meet is the mate. This guy over here is just a protector. Will that pull the reader out of the story and make the reader say, no, that's it, I ain't going to read any more of her books? Or would that put a twist in that they would like to see coming?
I would classify that right off the top of my head as plot twist, but
that's what I'm
then
thinking.
again, you will find readers that their first impression of how the characters are going to go throughout the rest of the book, or throughout the rest of the story. If you yank the rug out from under them, they're going to get pissed off.
See,
Other readers will just absolutely eat that up with a spoon and ask for more.
Mhm.
see, and that's what I'm banking on. I'm praying that, like, when I get this book done, I will leave it alone, because my critique partner is like, no. If you do this, you're going to piss off too many readers. You're going to have readers that are walking away because of that. Like, they're invested in this couple.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the rug out from underneath them and say, no,
Yeah.
this couple doesn't get to play. She has to play with the other guy.
If you're weaving them together in a romantic way, and your people who are reading it for the romance are going to be very unhappy when you do that.
See, that's what I'm thinking.
Hey, we were all rooting for Luke and Leah
Yeah. See,
in
that's
the
what
first
I'm
movie,
saying.
and then we got the revelation,
Whoa.
and it actually turned into Luke and or Leah and him. Luke and him would have been a totally different movie. I think someone's done that.
Well, yeah.
Although
I'm
some
sure
of us were kind of
that's
rooting for
ruined my
that.
fan fictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking there's a lot of fan fiction out there in
There
that
is.
vein. So
Really, just file off the serial numbers very carefully and give it a fresh paint job. You can reuse it.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I'm
For
struggling
Stephanie
with right
Meyer.
You will. What
now.
didn't?
Whatever works.
Oh Lord.
But yeah,
Wait,
so
not
that's where I'm
Stephanie
at.
Meyer. Stephanie Meyer is who wrote Twilight. Who is the 50 Shades of Grey chick? Whoever that was. Worked
Gray.
for her.
Oh,
E.L. Gray. The last name is Gray. I don't remember the initials. I've
Who
got
wrote-
50 Shades somewhere here.
50 Shades. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't remember either.
I bought it because everybody did that whole, oh my gosh, it can't be this way. No. And the girl is too young for what they're trying to. And I was like, wait. It's BDSM? Excuse me? What? Wait a minute. It can't be that way if it's BDSM. So I had to buy the book and figure out what they were talking about. And they're all full of shit.
Mm-hmm. You'd be amazed how often that happens.
It basically, 50 Shades of Grey, in my opinion, is a vanilla couple went chocolate on Saturday.
Pretty much, I would say.
Like, come on.
Not having read it,
That's
all I
not-
know is the reputation.
No,
But
granted,
then
the
again,
contract was there, but other than that,
I've never read the story of O either, so
like you said, it was a letdown.
I've heard that more often about that book
Mm-hmm.
from the
It
people
was
who
a lot of hype. I wish I had her hype men.
Mm.
from the people who read it from the standpoint of wanting to see the sexuality in it. They were very much disappointed.
Yeah, Grant, I say it was all hype. And whoever her hype people were did a very, very good job of marketing. Because they marketed that to women who did not like the idea of BDSM and went, oh, you can't do that. She's just out of college. She meets with this guy who is into BDSM. And he says to her, I'd like you to, or at first he says, go away, run away, which makes her go, oh no, I'm not running away. And so then he hands her a contract and he said, all right, if we're going to play, here's the contract. And if you read the book, the contract is all up to her, which is how it is. BDSM, the sub has the control, not the dom. But the hype men were not hyping it that way. They were hyping it as, oh, you should hear the drama about this book, and all these housewives are up in arms because this girl is too young and this guy took advantage of her. And so everybody bought the books and everybody went to the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the next
Well,
best thing would be a banning if you get your book banned.
Yep.
then
Because
again, you somebody like me who's very cynical is these little housewives are up in arms about this book because they never had a chance to have that kind of adventure.
True.
And they would never admit that they wanted one.
Right.
They might not have even known that they wanted one until they read the book.
Yeah.
True.
Well, it's the same with, what was that, the Bridges of Madison County?
Mhm.
Yeah. That was hyped a lot.
Everybody loved and I'm like, This is the most boring book I think. I didn't even finish it.
Now, see, I didn't even read the book, but I saw the trailers for the movie, and I was like, "Are you kidding? That's like Hallmark. I don't want to watch or read Hallmark. Sorry, not my thing."
But many people do.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Hallmark's
great.
a whole
Yeah.
channel for that matter. So, but
Yeah.
there's a reason.
And this was similar to a discussion that they had on Ragin today, on the Ragin show. Do you want to write to sell to a market, okay? Or do you want to write what you want to read?
There's
And
a big
there's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Yep.
so, when we write something, I'm thinking that most of us, at least here, write what we want to read or what we want to see. And we're not going to try to chase a market to make money or whatever. It would be nice to make some money off of it, but we're not going to change something just because it'll be more Hallmark and we'll be able to be
Palatable
you
to the
know,
person.
yeah.
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 Mhm.
If I wanted to write to a market, I would get hooked up with one of those publishers that has a house name and has several people writing stuff. You've got a definite formula you've got to stick to. You're free to do anything you want within the reason inside the covers of your particular contribution to that. You've got this many sex scenes. You've got this many deaths you're allowed. You've got this. The evil has to be just painted evil from the get-go, and there's no subtlety or anything in there.
Right.
This villain is not the hero of his own story. He's just there to be mustache twirling, tie a girl to the railroad tracks, sort of multiple rapist murderer sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, those kind of things do have a market.
Yeah, and
they sell.
Yeah, and people that are writing them, once they get a hang of the formula, they can actually turn out some really, really good stuff. And then you find them apologizing for having to stick to the formula, but you bought it.
Yeah.
I mean, and you went and bought the next two that you could find too. Didn't matter if it was the same writer or not.
I cannot get over. I have not read Danielle Steele. Let me just say that. But I have heard that her books are basically the same plot line. She just changes the names of the characters or the city that they're in or all of it. They change the name, change the city, but it's basically the same plot. I'm like, that's Hallmark.
Barbara what's her name?
You want to say Cartwright?
Cartland.
Cartland. Yes, that's the one. Basically, she's written one book 500 times.
Jesus.
All they do, you change the historical era, you change the costumes, you pay attention to the way people of that historical era talked, but it's always the same story.
God, that gets boring. And see, that's what
Not
I use
to
at
the
cons.
little old
when I'm
ladies
selling my
that
books.
spend hundreds of dollars on them. No,
Well, and
that's what they want.
The one thing that I can use at cons when people ask me, well, what's your book's about? I tell them, and then I say, here's the thing. If you've ever wanted a romance book that went a little further in detail, a little deeper, a little darker, these are those books. I'm sick and tired of reading books that you think, man, I just wanted more detail on that. Can I have some more in-depth part of the romance or more in-depth part of, yes, I'm weird, more in-depth part of the torture that went on or the abuse or whatever. I want to make it really bad for this girl to climb back up to where life is good again. I don't want it to be like, oh, I broke a nail. Like that's not real life. Real life is I lost my husband in a plane crash. Real life is I lost my family in a car crash. Real life is horrible. So start with horrible and then build your way back up. Don't give me this whole I got divorced and now I have to start all over. Like, no, please, come on. So that's it. Cons. I'll talk to people a lot about. They're tired of reading the same stuff. You know, and it's like,
Mhm.
well, my books are not the same stuff. So there you go.
Yeah, and being as that we're writing two different things, but between the two, well, all of us here,
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
different aims in mind.
Right.
I'm doing more like action adventure sort of stuff with sci-fi set dressing, and you've got the historical romance with the paranormal
Mhm.
backdrop or elements,
Right.
whichever's closer. I have to. On the first page, I've got to drop somebody right. I've got to drop the reader right in the middle of something. Just
Mhm.
you know,
And that's how my books
reach out,
start out.
grab them, and go. Hey, want to go for a ride?
Yeah. And that's how my books start out, which is why when I think it was on book 2, I got somebody that said, well, it started out really slow. Really? Really? Okay. Well, all right. I'll give you that because book 1 started out, bam, there is something happening and she's got to figure this shit out now.
Mm-hmm.
Book 2, okay, maybe it wasn't as fast, but there's still stuff happening. I can't start out with boring. But I guess in comparison to book 1, maybe it was. But here again, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It'll get better.
Teacher, real life is not horrible.
It can be, yes.
It can be,
It
yeah.
can
But
be, yeah.
Which is another thing. So, like, you could flip it on its head and say, well, that's why someone wouldn't buy my books. Because real life is horrible. They don't want to read about it. They want to read that real life is amazing. You know,
Mhm.
okay, I get that. But
Yeah.
then again, you could read about somebody who's also struggling and then worked her way up.
Mm-hmm.
I keep waiting for somebody to point out your book is a reason why it's given James Bond a bad name because you're saying being a spy in the middle of the Cold War is real boring.
Well,
Yeah.
But it
could
was.
be. Could very well be. Yeah.
Except for a few moments of absolute terror.
Yeah.
It was pretty much just filing papers and walking around and trying not to get noticed.
Hey, you know what? The world of IT is the same. I found that out. Except for a few moments of sheer terror when a virus hits the system. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll reset your password again. Sure.
Sure.
Okay.
You interrupted my crossword puzzle for that?
That. Exactly. Were you watching, Dan? Were you watching Over My Shoulder or something? What?
No.
Okay. Grant was saying that he has a struggle all the time. Grant, what do you do to get past the struggle? You know, what do any of us do to get past the struggle?
Well, it depends on what struggle for me. If it's getting words down, I'll go do something else.
Yeah.
I have to, like, I can't sit at the computer and go, okay, I have to get these words down. It's not going to work. I have to go out and do something.
I'm thinking Grant's talking about the struggle of do you write for the market or do you write what you want to write? And that's an internal struggle each writer has to kind of have.
Yes,
Now,
it depends on exactly why you're a writer.
Right.
Are you trying to make money, or are there stories in your head that's driving you crazy?
Well, like if someone came to Skunk and said, "Okay, Skunk, we want you to remake this other film, and just do it this way," and he's like, "But I've got a film I want you to make." No, we want you to do this film, but we're going to pay you a bunch of money for it. You're like, what do you do?
Well, if you got a bunch of money, you can make your own film after you're through with theirs.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what, for me personally, because I imagine that's what you're asking. I would consider it depending on what their idea is. If just for example, to pull something that I personally like, so I have a personal stake in it. If New Line Cinema called me up and said, we're planning on rebooting the Nightmare on Elm Street series. We know you're a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan, so we want you on board. I'd be like, okay, cool. Give me your pitch. I want to hear what you got. Yeah. And they're like, all right, we're going to bring Freddy Krueger back as a superhero who saves children. I'd be like,
Yeah.
No. What is wrong with you? It's a horror series about a child murderer who's possibly a molester. Why would you make him the hero? This doesn't make any sense. I don't want this. But if I showed up and they were just all like, we're gonna make this dark, it's gonna be evil, there's gonna be just dead bodies of children everywhere, and it's gonna be horrible, and we're gonna try to make audiences vomit in the aisleway, I'd be like, yes, I'm all in. Let's do this. This sounds great.
You'd have to break his arm to keep him from signing the contract. Yeah.
Exactly.
But
And
let's say
I'll be right
let's say
back.
that the offer is though for that first.
For the first one? Yeah, I would be like, no. No.
Yeah, see, they're going to pay you for that one though.
Okay.
And this goes with
I don't
my
want to get
theory.
involved.
Yeah, see, this goes with my theory is, if it wasn't work, they wouldn't have to pay you. Okay? Most people don't do what they love for, whatever. They do what they have to do to make the money.
Paycheck, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's very few jobs you can get for playing video games and partying all the time.
But they're out there.
There's a few, but we're not going to get those jobs. So.
I'm not. I suck at video games.
So, they don't have to pay for that.
Right.
But to show up and do something day after day and all this sort of stuff that's the grunt work that you hate doing, that's where the money is. Okay. And I think it's the same in writing is the grunt work. Like I made more money writing for magazines. They tell me what to write and they say, here, write about edit controllers, how to, use this computer to edit your video. And I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. And they said, we'll pay you $400. Okay, I'll do it. Thank you. But I only did it. But I did it once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a good. Oh man.
Yeah. Like
Grant. Yeah. That makes it tough.
But just because they remake it doesn't mean that it's going to be good.
Well, and what if it's not going to be good?
Right. And so then your name's on it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Was like if my name's on it. So to go to the, I don't want to. Again, I'm not wanting to shame anybody. But if, for example, I recently started working on a project for a client, and it was something that I started working on it, right? And then after I started working on it, I was like, I'm not enthused.
Yeah.
I feel like I've made a terrible mistake here. And so now I'm kind of forcing myself through it for the paycheck, but it's not it's again, I don't want to poop on somebody.
Right.
So I'm not going to name names, but it's one of those things where it was like I started working on the project and I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm forcing myself through it literally for the paycheck because you know what? It's going to be good money. I know it's going to be good money.
Right.
And I don't mind doing it because it's not against my moral code.
All right.
Now, like I was saying with the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, I don't want to do that. If they offered it because it would be bad. It would be bad for me. It'd be bad for my career. It'd be against my moral code. Right. Now, let's switch that out with something I really don't care about. They're going to make another Fast and the Furious movie if they want you involved. Okay. How much are you going to pay me?
Yeah.
I'm not really interested, but I mean, if the money's good, I don't really
no
care.
Kidding. If money's right. Yeah.
Like I care. If anybody, if it turns out to be bad, I could just pull up Bill Cosby and go on the, all the talk shows and crap all over it.
Well, yeah, you could. And then I think, don't you get paid?
Huh?
I don't know. I'm not famous. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a hard decision, and I think Grant is struggling with that too. With, he knows that like if he put a sexy girl on the cover of his comic, that it would sell out right away.
Yes.
At least I'd
But-
buy it.
Okay. Welcome, Keisha.
Hi.
But the point is, he wants to put his cat on there,
Mm-hmm.
and that will sell too. But it just won't sell out the same day. You know, you put it up
It
on
won't sell
Kickstarter.
to the same market.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Now-
you have to think: do I want that market?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to choose the market you're going to be.
And is it about money?
I hate
or
to
is
say
it
pandering
about the
to, but
passion?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to make money, then
Sex
basically
sells.
you've got to box up your morals over in a little
Yeah.
safety
Pretty
department
much.
over here. And
Pretty much. I don't have any anymore, so it's cool.
I had the same issue with a particular Facebook group I have. Okay. It's a comedic group. It's for humor. Okay. Do I have thousands of people in there? No. I'm surprised there's 350 people in there. I'm really shocked because
Right.
it was to be for the people who got it. You know.
Yes.
I'm surprised they haven't
And-
been scared away yet.
Well, I
But-
know.
No
But when people do leave, I don't like. Oh my God, I lost another member. You know. No, we make fun of them as they go out the door,
Usually,
but
yeah.
we don't. I don't cry about it. And a lot of people, because they're into this thing of numbers and chasing numbers, and I got to have so many for YouTube before I get monetized and all this, or I have to have so many people to buy my book before it'll make money. They will be, yeah, Michaela, don't listen to this part.
Do
But-
books make money?
Well,
I know, right?
they're supposed to hope,
they do for the publisher. For us writers, it's kind
Yeah.
of iffy.
Yeah.
but you know, people will pander and keep people on that they don't particularly care for.
Uh-huh.
Because they think
maybe
they're gonna
there
make
might
a-
be book
Is
sale
this
in
the
it.
butterfly conversation?
Butterfly?
What, magical butterflies? No, it has nothing to do with that discussion
Butterfly
this morning
effect?
on
Nope.
never mind the
let's
furthermore.
Let's
Okay,
not bring
no.
that back up.
Oh, I
please.
missed
I have no idea.
something.
No.
So
I want
No.
to know. Do
I
No,
did
Donna.
too, yeah.
No, Donna,
You
bad.
really,
Bad.
you really don't want to know.
No, you don't want
No,
to.
you don't.
But
I'm suggesting we do.
but
we'll
sometimes
find out later.
sometimes you will do all these things to try to keep that one person while the other 300 and some people are like going, what the hell is going on over there? You know, and
Right.
you can't do that. Okay. If Grant starts putting sexy women on the cover of his book just to get those people to buy it, then he's going to lose the people who want to buy it
Well,
to
and
see
he's
what the
lost
cat
your
will
brand.
do.
In doing
Exactly.
that, you lose your brand, or
Exactly.
you have to rebrand your stuff.
Mhm.
And like with
So-
mine, here's one of the things I struggle with as well. With my stuff, I brand it as sexy. There's sex in my books, and there's graphic
Oh, yeah.
sex in my book.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, but then with my co-author Linda,
Mhm.
she doesn't do graphic sex scenes like I do. And some of her books, she calls them door firmly closed. So like a
Mhm.
teenager could read her book. You know that something happened between the couple, but you don't see anything, you don't read anything.
I feel like
So-
if I was reading that, it would just go over my head. But I'm also me, so
Mm.
So, but at first I was like, Linda, you need to make sexier book covers and they would sell. Well, yes, they would, but to the wrong audience. And
Yeah.
that's where I had to reel it back and go, wait. No, Linda's books need to reflect Linda, and they do. So they're very tasteful. They're Western. They're historically accurate. Where to me, that would make my eye twitch. Like, I don't have to be historically accurate with every
Right.
piece of clothing on the damn book.
But her readers expect that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they do.
And her readers
if they
want
don't
that.
get it, they are
And-
loud.
And if she makes a mistake, they'll call her on it
They
too.
do.
Oh, yeah.
Because I asked her about a picture for a cover that we're working on, and she was saying she couldn't find a guy in the right clothing. And I said, "Are you serious? This guy's only got one button on his shirt." And she's like, "Yes, but it's the wrong button." I'm like, "You can change buttons." And I'm like, "Do you really think they care about buttons?" And she says, "Yes, they do. If that button is not historically accurate for the book that
I
it
can't
is
wait till
on,
I can't wait till I have a following for my books that they care about buttons.
I know.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Do you
I
guys
know.
care about buttons? Because I feel like you guys are my following.
I
No,
don't care
buttons
about
do not
buttons.
matter unless it's a belly button, and let's talk about what's beneath it.
Mm.
Right. So,
Wow.
but it's draining.
Sorry, just took a quick trip to Bermuda there.
Yeah.
That's how we
Yeah.
go. Isn't it?
And even though, as a writer, you can do both. Okay.
Mhm.
But just know who your audience is when you're doing it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, like Mad Gasser Cheerleader, that's full of innuendo and sex, and
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Oh,
The-
innuendo.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And,
innuendo and out the front door.
Mhm. That's very
Whatever you
nice,
just
Dan.
said,
I need
innuendo.
to remember that.
Let me write that down.
But like if I wrote in that kind of venue to some of the things like my nonfiction, then people would get a little bit upset about that, So you gotta.
There's only so much
your
sex
audience.
you can drop into a book on internet technology.
Without pictures.
Oh, but you can, but you gotta be careful how you do it. Yeah.
I know. Like, I mean, I can write some stuff. Don't
It's a
challenge me, Dan.
Yeah, it's a challenge,
Oh.
but it can happen.
Okay, here's an
Michaela will
example.
both write it together.
Okay.
Here's an example. It goes right back to what you were saying about the people who are
gotta find something
entirely into the fandom and the genre itself. When the movie Excalibur came out,
Mhm.
it's King Arthur. It's basically Knights of the Round Table, Lancelot and Guinevere and Arthur, love triangle sort of thing.
Mhm.
The biggest complaint I heard from the people that I was hanging out with at the time was, that's the wrong period for plate armor.
Ah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I did hang out with a lot of SCA people at the time. So,
And that's why when people ask me, is your book medieval? Is it just historical? I said, I didn't nail down a time. I like to say medieval, but nothing in my book nails down a time. I don't talk about armor. I don't talk about the food they had. I don't talk about weaponry. It's all vague. He has a sword. He rides a horse. He goes into battle.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's
in the
about
next
it. I
book,
don't get detailed on anything.
can you make it some kind of sexual food? Because that way you still have food in the book. No.
Oh, what are we thinking?
We're going
Like
down
9.5 weeks or something here, Keisha?
It sounds like it.
Wow.
it might be more on the order of Food of the Gods, but
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Talking about. There you go.
Yeah.
It means you have a
Yeah.
brand to protect.
Yeah,
yes,
and it
indeed.
does.
Yes,
And
indeed.
that's what we're striving for.
Yeah.
And you can always sell out and compromise, and your brand becomes, here's Grant's book about his cat, but he always puts these sexy women on the cover.
Yeah.
There
can
are
make a
people
sexy Catwoman.
that get away with things like that. What you see on the cover has nothing to do with what's between the covers.
Yeah, I don't
And,
like that
and
because I
a
always
lot of
feel
the
like I
romance
got
readers
ripped
will get
off.
you for that too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And like I was talking to Carl, this next cover that I wanted, originally I wanted two guys on the cover, but it's not a menage a trois. So how do you put two guys on the cover, two guys and one girl, but make it so that people understand it's not a menage a trois by looking at it? Because if they look at it and they go, oh, that's a menage a trois, that's what I want to read, they'll read it and go, well, this isn't what I wanted, and they'll give you bad reviews for that.
Well,
Yeah.
you have to have the
can't win.
guys with swords drawn on each other, with a girl in the middle, and
That's
obviously
just an
they're
extra
fighting over.
sexy menage a trois.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't give Michaela any ideas there.
Really.
No,
The one that survives gets the girl.
you can't have the two guys on an equal status on the cover.
Right.
Yeah.
One would have
One
to be
must
in the shadows.
one must be in the front and one must be
in
back in the
background.
shadows.
Yeah.
And that tells you that even looking at that cover, you're like, why is that guy in the background?
Yeah.
What is this story? This makes me
Stalker.
interested and intrigued. Could be stalker.
Yeah.
It's
Could
not-
be-
it's not-
He's got his
Could
hand
be.
on his sword because he's the protector, so
Right.
he's always ready to draw that sword.
But see, if you haven't read it yet, And you
I
see the
don't know
cover,
that.
you don't know that. So
It's-
it could be jilted lover. It could be, somebody
Jealous
coming.
husband.
That's book 7.
Yeah. So that kind of thing will draw a person in, and but it's a different story than having the gal on the cover and then the two guys on each side of her. That tells a different story
Yes,
altogether.
that tells a completely
And
different
you
story.
can't
I
have
don't know
that.
what kind of stories y'all are reading. Because me, I would just be like, oh, cool, 3 people on a cover. Like, and I'm me.
I'm
Really?
playing with this.
Yeah.
I'm playing with the psychology of the person.
Well, you're also
Who's looking
playing.
at the
You're
cover?
also playing with the cover art design,
Mhm.
which you do rather well.
Oh, thank
And
you.
with your background in psychology, you're getting into it very, very deeply and very, very subtly, and it's
Mhm.
coming out real well. And you could do the same exact 3 characters in different poses, different foreground, background, or one standing and one's falling down or whatever, and you have the girl in there. You have her expression changes to which way she's looking when she looks concerned.
Yeah.
Let you know which of the guys that actually
I just read that while Dan was talking, and I was
I
like,
know.
okay,
I'm like-
concentrate.
Whoa. Okay.
Okay, Grant.
I'm concentrating now.
now what
I
I
like
want
those
to know,
books too, but they're not published. Okay. Okay.
what I want to know
Michaela,
is,
can I still read them? No?
did you actually drop the phrase beating around the bush into that sentence with a straight face?
No, we didn't. Oh, good one, Grant. Okay.
Y'all.
No, see, the
Speaking
stories
of
I wrote
speaking
when
of
I,
another subject,
yeah, no, the stories I wrote when I was younger that I said no one else would ever want to read ever, like those are still not published.
yeah.
But Skunk, they will fit into your community, if you know what I mean. So
Oh.
I have not published any of them yet.
Okay, now I have to. Okay.
Now Keisha wants to
Michaela.
proofread.
Look at the books I've already written. Come on, the dude has wings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They
That
figure
makes
out
a
in
lot
book
of sense.
2 they have
Honestly.
tails and how to use them. So
Wait,
you
what do they
know.
use them for? Let me
I'm not
like.
telling you.
Keisha,
You've never read Venus on the Half Shell?
What on the half shell?
Venus on the Half Shell.
Okay, that's much better than what I heard.
Well, I do have an accent, but it ain't that thick.
I was just thinking, since I look like ZZ Top, I could sing. They've got tails and they know how to use it.
Oh Lord.
No.
So, guys,
sorry.
how's the weather?
Anyway.
So Keisha, since you're the newest author among us, like, do you have any questions or something?
First of all, I have to make a shout out to a specific person in here. Somebody told me the other day that they absolutely love the cover for my book.
Oh,
That's amazing.
I
So
think I
would
might
like-
have seen that show.
It was like awesome.
Yeah.
No, in person too, not just on the show. Yeah. I had one of my friends tell me that they were like, "Hey, this turned out really cool. Did you do that?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." But
You directed it though.
but I know who did. So awesome by association.
Yeah. You directed it. You okayed it. So that was what.
I'm
yeah.
still selling like a book every couple days or so.
Good.
I mean,
Good.
that's better than no
Okay,
books.
Out you go.
Yeah.
Out.
Yep. You gotta get out of the club.
You
I'll see
added
my
the
way
goose.
we were just complaining before you got here about not
How
making
do you
any
know?
sales.
Yeah,
I was
well,
watching you guys complain. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay. Okay.
It's fine.
the longer you watch, the more we'll complain.
And I have people keep asking me, telling me they want signed copies. So I guess that's a good sign.
That is a good thing.
Uh-huh.
Good.
Definitely.
Good.
All of the people that read it so far said they like it, which is disgusting. And I hate people talking to me about my book.
You got to get over that.
So
Yeah.
you guys know me so well, right? Okay, I have
Yeah.
ADHD. People are like, well, in this part of the book, this happened. And I was like, that's good. I don't remember that.
No kidding. Keisha, you're not the only one. Like,
No.
people will come to me and say that, and I'm like, "Oh, when did I write that?" Or
Yeah,
like,
because-
we'll come back with
because-
What did I put
critique
there?
on something I wrote
Because
last week, and she'll
yeah.
say, "Remember that part?" No.
Because how
Remember when
long
this
ago did
character
you
did
write
this?
that?
And I'm like, I wrote that book 6 or
Yeah.
7 years ago now.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
they're like, I mean, I reread it and proofread it and stuff like that when we
Yeah.
were editing, but my
Mhm.
brain doesn't focus long
No.
enough on stuff like that
Oh,
to
no.
remember it. And people are like, hey, did you mean to do this and blah 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 blah, and what was she
Mhm.
doing and what was her thoughts? And I was like, oh no, I wrote most of this at like 3 o'clock in the morning, hyped up on caffeine and pickle juice. So
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Have
That's
you-
the
have
way
you-
it goes. Like,
have any of you ever had the experience? You're sitting there, it's like 9 o'clock at night, the words are flowing, you're typing away. You get to a point to where you've got to stop, you've got to go to bed, you get up the next morning and you read back so you can catch up to what you were into, so you can dive into the writing again. You go, who wrote this?
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
I
All the
don't
time.
remember. I don't remember a single bit of the. I don't remember that scene at all. I didn't.
Did you see the picture I took of my shower wall?
Is that a loaded question?
No.
is
No.
was
I
that a
took a
today
Sharpie
thing?
marker and I wrote on my shower wall because I was having ideas like coming like crazy, and I was
Oh.
like,
A
I have to go to
Sharpie?
bed.
Honey.
What? Yes. It wasn't a Sharpie.
Oh,
It was
she's-
an Expo marker.
She's had
She-
to clean Sharpies off of showers
No.
and bathtubs before.
She also has told me she has cleaned a deer on tires
A deer
in
hide,
the
yes.
yes,
Yes,
a deer hide and
I
tires
was
in her
planning it.
shower.
Where else are you going to
So
put it?
like I don't
Well, first you got to move the Harley engine out.
No, that's
See?
But yeah,
Oy.
but there have been times where, like, the ideas are just coming and coming, and you're like, God, I gotta freaking go to bed. And you know, the moment you leave that keyboard, all those ideas are gone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
My
there was one
favorite-
night where I was
my
like,
favorite thing
I'm gonna write them down.
is when I wake up in the middle of the night and I had a dream and I'm like, I gotta write this down. And then I wake up later on and I'm like, and I'm like,
Mhm.
apparently that meant something to me at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
What it
You were
means now.
channeling Cousin It. That's what it
Yeah.
Oh
was.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I have an entire like section on my phone dedicated to waking up and writing down my dreams. And sometimes it's like just jarbled up words that were
Mhm.
probably meaning something really important. I really wish I knew what they were.
Yeah.
But by the time I get to them in the morning, my brain goes, nope.
Not
No idea
even
what
Google
that meant.
Translate can help you with this one there.
Yeah.
My favorite
See-
is the ones where I wake up and I'm like, frog jump hole, button, skylight, yellow. And I'm like, it was
Yeah.
probably something really good.
It's a nice haiku, but I
Yeah.
can't make a story out of it.
I had
My
this. I
problem-
had the same problem with notes. I write notes to myself, and I'll be like, "What the
honey.
hell's that mean?" I don't know.
See, my problem with writing down my dreams and trying to make stories out of them is that my dreams fall into two categories, right? The first one is dreams that are so boring that I honestly think they're real life.
Hello.
Like there was one time I had a dream where I was at work and it took forever for something to happen in the dream that was not real. That was something that would make me go, wait a second. How is that possible? That shouldn't be happening.
Oh.
I'm in a dream. And then I'd wake up and be like, crap, I thought I was already at work. I'm an hour late, sort of thing. So nothing interesting there. And then the other half is so not safe for work that if I even talked about it here, I'd get canceled.
Mm.
Cancel culture.
Yeah, dreams can be funny.
Michaela,
and dangerous.
you asked me
And-
nicely. I might tell you about it later.
Speaking of
Okay.
notes,
Okay,
y'all help me out with the
Oh,
Tom
Okay.
okay,
Darby.
good.
Okay, so we've got an Arab prince who
Freshie,
gets tied up to a bed. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah. And then there's a
Freshie pick
smackdown.
up
Tries to pick up a girl
against
in a bar. A girl in a
and
bar
Tony save him from a smackdown.
gets told
Gets
to stay
hold
close.
to stay close to the prince, and girlfriend gets jealous. Aha! I could read
yeah.
the. I kind of understood the last part.
I read it just fine. I don't know about the rest of y'all.
I don't know what kind of drugs y'all are on, but I can't read my handwriting.
The good kind, obviously.
The
That's a good
ADHD
day,
ones,
Molly.
obviously, yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
Dan. Do you think I can read my own handwriting? Let's
Yeah,
be real
my
here.
handwriting is. This is my diary, so I'm not going to put it up close.
Yeah, don't do that.
But but my handwriting is atrocious. So you know,
Yeah, that's
we're
a
good.
good day, Molly. That's
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
sun up to sundown.
No, I don't mean that when I said I couldn't read my notes, I don't mean that I couldn't read my handwriting, which is bad enough. No, I mean I'll write a note to myself like I deserve it. Okay. Now that
Yes,
meant
you
something.
do, Carl.
Well,
That
thank
meant
you.
something at the time.
At
but
the time, it meant something, and
see,
I was gonna
there's
go
the
off on
writer's shorthand
I have
coming in.
stacks and stacks and stacks. Oh wait, no, don't slide off the desk. Okay.
and
I
and
have
the
stacks and stacks of that, and then it goes
Uh-huh.
over here, and I'll get it later, and then I put it over here, and I'll get that later, and like where the
There we
and
go.
then I'll start looking through these notes sometimes, and I'll think, oh my god, that was a great idea.
Mhm.
I can't use that now because I've already put that book out, or I've already made
yeah.
this. I've gone this direction in that book, so now that idea doesn't fit the book.
Hey,
Oh,
Molly
so-
says hi,
so-
Callie.
Hi.
Hi, Callie.
Ah! Okay.
So
Put me
I
down.
take notes
Mommy
during
says,
shows
"Bad
like
daddy."
this.
Yes.
I take notes during shows like this to try to remember what I'm supposed to like look up or. So I've got
do too.
John Wick trilogy. I Can See Your Voice. Evertree Ginger Beer Screaming Theater. Redgate. After Dark. Bat Boy the Musical. Zordon of E. Elton. Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, Big Bang.
I remember some of
Ingram.
those shows.
You know what
He
you
wrote
should
those
do?
down. Yeah.
We should just
Sex
Google
party.
these
We're just gonna-
partial phrases and see what we come up with. Like,
Yeah. It'd be
just
interesting.
Google
I'm
partial
the-
phrases. Maybe something will click.
Hey,
I'm
Yes.
the only one who makes notes in complete sentences
I know.
in writing I can understand, and so I
An
know.
overachiever.
You
So
see
Donna,
it.
just take all of
Yeah.
my notes for me because that would make my life a million times better.
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And see, the thing is, when Donna does that, see, it makes sense to her later, and she gets the full import of what she was trying to say.
Ooh, that's no fun. I
On-
like guessing.
On the I deserve it, it wasn't a positive affirmation to myself. It was a complaint I was going to make about people who will stop doing something and will go shopping or go eat something or something and say, I deserve it.
oh yeah.
I was good. I deserve it. No, you
I
don't.
fall down on ice and go, I deserve
No.
it.
Well, okay, that's different, Keisha. We'll talk about that later in our session.
Okay, cool.
But that's totally
Short
different.
bus just pulled up.
No,
have you read the
my
short
idea was that people many times will stop doing something they're supposed to be doing and take that break and say, I deserve it, when they don't, when they
Right.
haven't finished what they're supposed to be doing yet. And that was the rant I was going to go off on one night.
I
am
found that the
guilty of that.
easiest way to get the dishes washed when I was living alone was to sit down and try and write something. Next thing I know, I've got the house spotless.
Dude, I do that too. Every time I have to do something, I go, you know what? I should really do this. And then I end up doing everything else.
It's avoidance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
really good at it though.
It's a procrastinating technique. I know. Like, we would excel at it. And that's why, like my neighbors one time, they said, oh my God, your gardens are beautiful. I was out working in my gardens, had been for weeks.
Yeah, that's because I was supposed to turn out 2 books last week.
Honest to God, yeah.
Yes.
I said, but here's the thing, sweetheart, you can't go in my house. And she says, what do you mean? And I said, well, you could, but I'd be embarrassed if you did. If my yard,
I just looked around my house in
my
horror.
garden is growing. Inside my house is atrocious. Like, there's laundry everywhere. The dog's probably got toys everywhere. You know, like, it's a mess. But if outside looks like a mess, inside is nice because I'm procrastinating.
I 100% feel that because that is my
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
Who is
Yep, Holly is
getting
too.
arrested?
Oh,
it's not my turn.
It's just a typical night here in town.
Okay.
We have sirens go by all the time.
Yep.
And we don't live
we
in
don't even get traffic on our roads, so
Yeah.
we don't live in like a slum or anything, okay? But there's only 2 or 3 streets that go north in this town. And so when they're going from one place to another, they have to go by this house. So
Yep. Yeah, and that's the
And
thing.
it's
Like,
usually ambulances, not
yeah.
cops.
so
Well,
if
that's
you're a
even more
new writer
depressing.
and you're listening to us
Yeah.
and you're not chiming in, I can't see you. Here's some advice: the laundry will wait. The dishes will wait. If you are writing your
Mine
book,
waited a little too long.
well, right, but for the most part, stuff like that can wait. Like, write your book, get it done. If you only have 15 minutes to sit down and write, use those 15 minutes. Because your laundry's going to be there when you get done. The dishes will be there when you get the other stuff, like mowing the yard. Like, it'll be there.
Well, there's also to turn that on its head. Washing the dishes, mowing the yard, that's a great form of meditation when you're stuck on something writing and you need the mindless chore so that your brain will go ahead and tick over.
Yes.
Without you having to really put too much conscious thought into it. Your subconscious will go to work for you because it
That's
wants a
why
paycheck too.
When writers say that, they're in the shower, they get their best ideas. Well, because in the shower, you can't have your phone with you. Normally, there's no music playing. There's no TV on. You're not talking to anybody. I said normally. So it's a moment where you have nothing going on except you. You are in your space and in your head, and you can get ideas.
I used to keep a little spiral notebook in my hip pocket at work, and I would be doing my job at work, and an idea would hit me, and I'd scribble something down, just a few sentences, and then come back to it later on when I had time. And I wrote the entire outline for my first attempt at a novel. It took 4 of those little 50-page spiral notebooks, and I started typing it up, and each little page on that notebook turned into 4 pages of outline. And then when I once I started typing, and then when I went back, and it kept getting geometrically larger as I went by, and unfortunately that was my first attempt, so it wasn't really all that good.
Right, but it was an attempt, and it was a beginning, and you got to start somewhere.
And Molly, the ideas are still there. I can always go back and actually, now that I have a lot of experience that I didn't have then, I can do it better this time.
Yeah, and Molly, I was going to say earlier, to top off what you're saying here, I didn't ever take any notice of like writing sprints. You'd see all the time on Facebook or wherever, you'd see people saying, "Oh, we're doing a writing sprint. Let's sprint." And I'm like, what the hell is a sprint?
Honestly, I love those.
X amount of time, and all they do.
Michaela?
Uh-oh, did we lose Michaela?
The internet got her.
I think what she was...
Go ahead.
I think what she was trying to say, since Michaela is frozen, you are frozen. So they do 15-minute word sprints where they go, it's sprint time. For the next 15 minutes, we're going to write nonstop. And then you see how much or what you can come up with in that 15-minute time frame, which is great. I love doing that. I actually follow a couple of those accounts on Twitter as well as Facebook. So every once in a while, like, it'll come up in my feed and it'll be like, you guys write for 15 minutes. And it gives me enough of that like energy boost in my head to go, hey, I can actually write for 15 minutes. I've got time. And then I sit down and I write for 15 minutes. So I love them just because it gives me that little outside nudge, because I'm one of those people where I need a fake sense of accomplishment in order to do things, or else I would literally just sit comatose for hours on end. So
My
like I
camera
have to
has
have
been broadcasting when I sleep in the chair.
Yeah. Well,
But,
now, Keisha, do you stop at the end of the 15, or is that a rule?
normally
Or
it's
can you go?
normally it can't, like a lot of people will stop at the end of the sprint.
There you go.
But
Thanks for keeping it going, guys.
most of the time, if I'm writing like that 15-minute sprint, if the sprint is over, I'll keep writing. Like my
Good,
brain is like,
good.
okay, I finally got an idea. Let's roll with it.
Yeah,
And
jump starts. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Keisha. Yes, that's the idea of it, is go for 15 minutes and just word vomit on the page. And it doesn't matter if it's good, it doesn't matter what it is, just write. And like she said, if in that writing then you come up with something good, just keep going. But at least go for 15 minutes. And if you think 15 minutes is too long, try 5 minutes. And when I started doing that, I started it with Linda, and I said, I've never sprinted. What the hell is that? And one night she was doing the same thing. She's like, I cannot pull words out. I cannot, I cannot make words happen.
Words are hard sometimes,
They
guys.
are.
All the time.
Because you have ideas,
honestly.
but then to make the ideas happen on paper or in the computer, it's like pulling teeth. Like, I have these ideas. Why can't I put them down? I don't know.
Do you think it's the pressure of having to come up with a perfectly formed sentence that makes sense to get that idea down, or do you think you could do better if you just
For me,
type
does
a
break
few
me a
words?
little bit.
Yeah, I think sometimes I will get into this thing and I will just type a few words of what it is, then I hit the space bar a couple times, and then I go, or the enter key a couple times, then I go down and I go, okay, now after that, this happened, okay?
Yes.
And then I know I'm going to have to go back and fix that other, but at least I got past it, and I'm ready to, and I get to a place where the words do flow.
And for me, I put in a lot of my manuscripts, and I've told you guys to look for this before, I'll put more here and I'll highlight it. Because there's something there that I need to elaborate on, or I need some more detail, but I just don't have it right at that moment. So I'll go on with the story, and as the story plays out in my head, those details come in. Okay, all right, we can add this or we can add that, and it fills it in. So that's why I'm always like, guys, check, make sure that there's no more here before we publish this thing.
One of the things that happens to me is I'll be writing something and I'll get on up and it's fairly well developed. And then I figure out why somebody did this particular thing earlier. And now I could go back and drop that in now that I know what it was. But there's a bit in Abducted where Tom's kind of hinting a little bit about his past. That wasn't because he's being coy. It's because that was the first story with him in it that I ever wrote. And now that I've had years and years and years of writing stuff with him, I know what his life was before. And I'm going back and filling in the blanks.
Yeah. And some people are very good about, they can write a character's backstory. They can write the plot, the outline, and they've got it all done before they start writing the story. I can't, because I don't know where the story's going. My characters haven't told me yet. I just write up the incident report. Like,
I have no idea. That's why I start with an action scene. Boom, this happens. How are they going to get out of this one?
Molly. Yes. In fact, my critique partner sent me a message a few days ago, and she says, I need you to make this scene better. And it wasn't even a sex scene. It was just a kissing scene. She's like, but I need you to put feeling in it because I'm not there. I said, okay, all right. Well, then I made the scene better, but I couldn't figure out where to go next. She pops on there and she's got it. The story's flowing again. I'm like, I never would have thought to do that. Okay. And so now the story's back online and she's happy with that scene. And all I did was add a few sentences. But it was enough working together that we could make the scene a really important scene.
Well, that's why having a good critique partner or an editor will help you tremendously, because
Oh, hell yeah.
they will come up with those ideas that say,
Or
well, why
several.
don't you do this? Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
and honestly, if you have several editors or critique partners, or critique partner, then editor, then you, then back to the editors, that's more likely you're going to catch all those things that you didn't catch with one person.
Mhm.
Especially because let's say that one editor that you sent it to has got a lot on their plate, and they're like, you know what? This is the second time I've run through this manuscript. I'm just going to skim through it. Yeah, well, you skimmed through it and you missed stuff. Or as the author, you've read it 600 times. You're tired of it. You don't want to see it again. But your critique partner, your editor can come back with, hey, you missed this and you missed that, and I caught these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to throw out, it's easier for other people to catch mistakes when you're right than it is for you.
We lost your sound.
Yeah.
Your sound
Can you
went.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now
Oh,
we can.
that's better. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why that it was weird. Okay. So
Blame the internet. We always do.
right. I'm blaming the internet. No, but what I was saying is that it's always easier for other people to catch your mistakes than it is for you, because like you said, you have read your manuscript like a bajillion times, so your brain doesn't automatically catch everything, because you can like read over something without even knowing it, and then somebody will be like, how did you miss this? It's obvious. And it's like when you look at the same thing so much, your brain just doesn't register it.
That's a good point. Even if it's not a mistake, but it's something you haven't thought about. I was trying to figure out how the Mad Gasser in the Return of the Mad Gasser will get to this lady's apartment. Okay. He can't get to it. And Donna's like, why? And I said, well, she's up on an upper floor. And she's like, well, why doesn't he use a fire escape? And I said, oh, okay.
Not all.
Then I had to do.
Escapes. You
I
just
had
have
to
to
do
jump out
some
and hope you can make it.
I had to do some research, and now she is on the third floor of a 3-story building. It's apartments, but it's only 3 stories. And in Arizona, where they live, you don't have to have a fire escape on the 3rd floor. Now, if you have 4 floors, you do, but 3 floors you don't. So I fixed that. But somebody else, a reader would have come along and said, well, hey, why didn't he go up the fire escape? Good question.
Yeah.
And it's actually going to become an important plot point. So it's a good thing she fixed that. But it wasn't even a mistake. It was just something she noticed in reading it and went, hey, never thought of that.
Oh, yeah, if I noticed it, someone else is going to.
Chill out. So I inserted it into the conversation, and that's all it took. Yeah. Sometimes, and that's the thing is, don't overthink it, Keisha. Don't overthink things sometimes.
Me overthink things?
I know, right? Like,
wow.
I would never. All the time.
Sometimes all it takes is a sentence added or a sentence taken away for it to work. Because if like you're saying the last paragraph you described where they are. Well, in the next paragraph you have the character say something about where they are. Then that makes the first paragraph not needed. So sometimes it's just one sentence or another that really makes it happen or makes it fall flat on its face.
Yeah, sometimes it's the tiniest fix gets things to work, and then sometimes it's one of those, I've got to build the Titanic here.
Yeah. Well,
like you have a map built of your entire city, and you have everybody's grandparents mapped out. And
have you seen my web? I've got an entire solar system.
Yeah, that's Dan right there. I was just that's where you're going. Yeah.
And that's a lot of
so I'm describing Dan.
Authors. You have to do a lot of back research. Did they have a gun in those days? Did they use swords in those days?
What model
you go down that rabbit hole, as they call it, and it's because, well, okay, how can I say this correctly so that the historians that read this won't nail me on this one tiny detail? So it took 3 hours or 3 days of research when it's one sentence in the whole freaking book.
Mm-hmm. Which sword hilt is actually period for this?
Yes.
And it can be important, especially for the younger readers, to bring them in. And I'm not saying younger like kids, but
young adult type, early adult.
Well, yeah, because
people who are just discovering.
Yeah, because they might think, well, why didn't they just do this? You know,
it's got to make sense.
Yeah, because like it. Okay, I watch. I've been watching a lot of Agatha Christie stuff, and Hercule Poirot, he has a telephone. Okay, so he can call and say, get the police down there and stop that guy. If you read Sherlock Holmes, they didn't have a telephone. So he had to have somebody else go run and get a cab and go down and chase down whatever. And if
telegrams.
And sometimes your reader might not get in the period unless you put them in that period. Mm-hmm. The frustration of not being able to do something right away.
Here's one from real life. I was talking to somebody at work, one of the younger folks, and I told him how Lindsay had to take a Greyhound bus from New Mexico to Athens to meet me in person for the first time when we've been online friends for years. And the little girl said, "Why didn't she take an Uber?" And I'm going,
"They didn't have Uber then."
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we were saying with the other things. That did not exist in this time period.
Well,
it was brought to
thought for a second. Keisha, you've got to go, right?
I have a toddler that is screaming my name outside the door, and Daddy is very sad about it. So
okay, so we'll see you.
I'll see you guys later. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Bye. So one thing I was going to say with that, Dan, is there was an author just recently that was pegged because her book didn't comment on anything with COVID-19, anything with people wearing masks or social distancing. Her book was written in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Before
we knew what COVID-19 was. Like, so how is she supposed to be I don't know. Like, how are you supposed to see the future and write your books, So she was like, I got this bad review, guys, but it's all because my book didn't mention social distancing or putting masks on or any of the mandates.
Yeah.
I didn't know about any of that when I wrote the stupid thing.
Yeah, really, it didn't exist.
Yeah. And sometimes you do want to go in. I'm usually, I will say, if somebody writes a review, you don't want to go back and argue with them.
Right.
But every once in a while, on something like that, I would have to go back and say, this was written pre-COVID. Okay.
Well, and even if it were written during COVID, like mine is, I'm not going to put that stuff in there because in the future, maybe they won't know about it. Maybe they won't care about it. And then they're going to have to go and research what COVID is and what it became. And I don't need that.
Unless that's important to the story.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's still not. Like, it's a freaking romance. Let it take you away from COVID-19,
Really?
Right. Although that reminds me of the false,
unless you want to get to the point to where part of the plot is, I can't wait to see what she looks like without her mask on.
There you go. Exactly. That could be part of the story.
But not a medical mask. Like, come on now.
They meet in the grocery store and they both have their masks and they're wondering what the other looks like under the mask. I mean, it could.
Yeah, you could do it.
Hey, it's not going to be anything I use, but.
Right.
I created a humorous romance cover, okay, which I cut out my face wearing a mask and this lady I know wearing a mask, and I had her dipped down and given her this kiss with the masks on, and it was called Masks of Fire. And it was stupid.
Oh.
But it was fun.
You could always have this beautiful romantic couple standing there on the cover with their masks on, gazing at each other, because their eyes are the only thing they can see, and the title is These Eyes.
Yeah, you go.
Good God. Okay, guys, I
Of
am
course,
We're
exhausted.
getting punched.
you might have to pay royalties to
Yeah.
the Guess
Yeah.
Who, but
Yeah.
I think
We've had a
Michaela's
lot of
trying
fun.
to say
Thank you guys for
she's
showing up.
tired.
Because,
Yep.
yeah, I'm exhausted.
So can I just want to bring up something in real quick that I was thinking about in relation to what you guys were saying. In 2006, there were 2 films that were released, right? One was Final Destination 3, and the other one was The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
Uh-huh.
Both of those stories deal with high schools.
Yes.
And both of those stories featured different things in relation to the high schools that were important to the story, but at the same exact time were not featured in either, or were things that weren't featured in both stories. But at the time period, were important to our world, our worldview. Both stories didn't have to have those things because they weren't that important. So for and like the best example I can think of that's in Tokyo Drift. The movie begins with the main character going to a new high school and having to pass through a metal detector.
Yeah.
A lot of high schools have metal detectors and security and stuff like that, right? But that's only important to his story because later on he's going to get into a fight. There's going to be violence. So the whole metal detector thing is like that's important to illustrate like this is the kind of school this is.
Yes.
And metal detectors are all over the place in schools across the country. But that's not important to Final Destination 3's story. On the flip side of that, though, Final Destination 3 was dealing with photography, was specifically digital photography, which was, again, something that was really tantamount in 2006. Everybody now had digital cameras and they were taking pictures all the time. You didn't have to go get your photos developed at a place. You could just take pictures all the time. There were very few cameras shown in Tokyo Drift. But again, that was a part of our worldview, especially as Tokyo Drift takes place in Japan for most of the film, and you rarely see a digital camera in that movie. So it's important to the story. Just because it's part of our current worldview doesn't mean that it has to be in your story specifically.
Right.
It has to be important to the story.
Right, exactly.
There's no sense in bringing something up if it's not important to the story.
Yeah, it would be the same as bringing up the fact that they have steak dinner. If that's not important to the story, don't put it in there.
Yeah.
Now, if it was a steak dinner from, they had gone out and gotten the animal themselves and harvested it and ate the steak, then okay, that can be part of the story. But like, if it's not crucial to the story, no, it's not needed.
And you could also bring it up with the idea of character development too. Let's remember the $5 milkshake. Yeah. Right. What the food that they order in Pulp Fiction doesn't really matter to the story. Their order it was to basically kind of build the character of the restaurant they were going to. This was not that important. But what was important and what they made a big deal about was the $5 milkshake. Is the $5 milkshake really integral to the plot? No, but it gives you the mindset of what the way that Vincent Vega and Mia Wallace think. Yeah. So you can do the same thing with the steak. If somebody orders a steak, the steak's not integral to the story, but somebody could comment on that. It's like, oh, you're getting the porterhouse.
Right. It's as opposed to something vegan.
Or just like you're getting the porterhouse instead of the T-bone. I like having something that's a little, I prefer something that melts in your mouth and not something you have to tear apart like an animal. Okay, there you go. There's the line that builds character development. It's not important to the story, but it's there. But you're not shoehorning it in to shoehorn it in. It had a purpose, So if you set a story that's specifically in 2021, in 2021. And the story has to do with family dynamic and stuff. You probably do want to bring up COVID was happening at this time period. It was something we were all having to deal with. But if you're doing an action movie or something that's set in 2021, you don't have to worry about that. It's an action movie. People are going to be riding motorcycles and jumping off of buildings. They don't care whether or not somebody's wearing a mask.
Right.
Yeah.
They got.
Sorry, I speak from the perspective of movies because I'm a filmmaker.
Right. For what we do, it does.
Your input is also very valuable to us as writers, because that is a point of view that we have to consider, especially if we have a very visual writing style.
Yeah. Yeah, he fell 21 stories to his death, but at least he has a mask on. That was great. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, Michaela. I didn't mean to keep the show.
No, you're fine, Skunk. Absolutely. And it depends on the story. It depends on the viewpoint, and these are all factors to consider, that a lot of the new kids that are, I say new kids, but I wrote a book 20 years ago and I just haven't published it. Maybe there's a reason.
Well, to carry on what Skunk said there, I was rewatching Breakfast Club, and I was watching a critique of it. And one of the people in the comments of the YouTube video said something about, how did Brian get the gun past the metal detector anyway? And I'm like, this was done in the 1980s, hon.
Schools didn't have metal detectors.
We didn't have
metal detectors.
But the person making the comment had never gone to a school that didn't have metal detector.
Besides the fact that it was a flare gun, but okay.
Yeah, it was a flare gun. but her thing was, how did he get it into school to begin with? Well, okay.
Different
time. And
time.
so you had to kind of get them back into that time period.
Well, hell, the schools around here still don't have metal detectors of any kind.
It could have been even more jarring. It could have been a school like I went to in the 70s, where everybody had gun racks in the rear window of their pickup trucks with 2 or 3 rifles and everything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And nobody thought anything of it. Matter of fact, if your teacher noticed it, he'd go over to his truck and get his and show it to you so you could.
Yeah. It's a different world. Yeah. It's a different world.
Yeah.
Okay, Michaela.
All right, guys.
I'm sorry.
Time to say goodnight.
Yeah. It was fun. Thank you guys for showing up. I really appreciate it, because it means a lot to me. Yeah, Skunk finally got here. Yay!
Yeah.
And thanks, audience.
Yes, thank you guys in the audience. Grant, Molly, Mike. It was awesome. Thank you for coming, and we will try and do it again next week.
Hopefully without the